Good afternoon, everyone. I can start now?
Yes, Wafa, we're going to start. I'm just going to say, okay? Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Imelda, and everyone. Good afternoon.
Okay.
We share with you the research with my colleagues, Dr. Imelda. The research about the reality of psychological trauma among children in Palestine in light of the war on the Gaza Strip from the point of view of parents.
Thank you, Wafa. That's what we're going to talk about today. And thank you all for being here. And I was delighted to hear Nicole quoting William Butler Yeats earlier on, saying the centre cannot hold. And I think our research shows that the centre is very tenuous and it is really falling apart. And I'll probably finish with another quote from Yeats. So today we're going to talk about the research that we carried out recently, which is obviously very difficult. It's in the news every single day, but it was good to get the perspective from the parents. So our first one is going to set out the context for our study. We did some research on the literature on trauma. We then will present the research results, and we did analysis and recommendations. And I will just say there is a shortened version of the paper will be published by Pixel, and also at a later stage, if anybody wants the full detailed research with all the SPSS and all the details and validation, we can supply that to you as well. So Wafa and I are going to alternate. So Wafa's going to take the next 4 slides. So I'll change them when you're ready, Wafa, okay?
I'm ready, Doctor.
Okay. Off you go.
Yeah, thank you very much. The worsening situation for the children in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, such as increase in the rate of bombing and destruction, is leading to a rise in trauma rates. The data indicates that more than 116,000 children in Gaza Strip need psychological assistance following the effects of ongoing Israeli aggression there. Effective efforts must be present in organizational community contexts familiar with trauma, with a knowledge-based understanding of trauma's effects. This study research objective, this study identifies importance of challenges experienced by Gazan children because of this war, especially among children aged 5 to 9, through the eyes of parents and caregivers. The study was limited to Gaza Strip to understand the local context. Practical importance, the findings will benefit the Ministry of Education in identifying the reality of psychological trauma in both kindergarten and low primary stages. Theoretical importance, the results will help to inform counseling practices and may be knowledge base for subsequent studies.
Thank you. Yes.
Physical trauma occurs. Sorry, you can listen me? I
Yes,
think it's
yes,
okay.
good, yeah.
Psychological trauma occurs where a person's capacity to protect their own well-being becomes overwhelming, so that they require external support to be able to heal. Past trauma, stress, disorder, psychiatric disorder that may occur in people who have experienced or witnessed a traumatic event, series of event, or set of circumstances,
Yeah.
and trauma and children. Adver Adverse childhood experience include stress and trauma have been identified as a focused factor showing listing important on children experience them. When they term effect with a long term effect includes psychological, physical, mental, and behavioral problems. Allostatic old show ongoing stress where worsens the impact. Indicator for the children likely to suffer for trauma. PTSD include throwing that they are thinking that they were going to die during the traumatic event, psychological difficulties before such event, stressful life event beforehand, family difficulties afterwards. Cures having a mental health problem after the event, local of lack of social support and social isolation after the event. There have been previous studies related to trauma in Palestine.
Thank you, Wafa. I think
Thank
we can,
you, Doctor.
yeah, I think we can definitely see that what we're all familiar with in terms of the literature on trauma, Wafa has just outlined it really well. And this is really what we're seeing in action, sadly, in Gaza. So I'm going to cover now the research results of the survey. What we did was we talked to parents, and we had planned to do a lot of very simple online surveys and get easy results to gather and analyse. But because of the situation there, Wafa played an absolute blinder, Dr. Wafa did, and she managed to recruit individual researchers to go to parents. And we got a very good statistically numerical successful figure. So we were very, very pleased with that. We got responses from over 316 parents and carers, and I'll break those down in a moment. And what we did was we used a Likert scale for the survey, and we used a 7-point Likert scale to give a really good range for responses and to get some accuracy in our responses. And these questions focused on the trauma effects displayed by children as witnessed by the parents and their carers. And the questions were based on the typical trauma responses that are exhibited by children, as Dr. Wafa has just outlined. And they sought to establish the degree to which the children were showing such symptoms. The characteristics and distributions of the study sample members were monitored according to the qualitative variables of the questionnaire, namely age, gender, place of residence, and that'll have some relevance in a moment, number of family members and number of displacements where people were moved from one area to another, as we would regularly hear on the news. One thing that we were not able to do, sadly, was to interview the children, because we developed a whole graphical questionnaire for the children to give their responses themselves. But because of the situation and the lack of Wi-Fi, the lack of electricity, the lack of charging the phone, etc., we weren't able to do that. But I think our results from the parents' perspective are really useful. Now, can you see that? Yeah, trying to leave my other glasses. I can't. Now, first of all, we looked at the three regions of Gaza, and the central Gaza Strip, the North Gaza Strip, and the South Gaza Strip. And, you know, it's still, sorry, where's it gone? Touch anything. There we go. And we looked at these, and it's actually really relevant because I was listening to a report from MSF today on the news, and it was saying that there's no facilities in the north at all. All these so-called humanitarian aid situations are down in the south and in South Gaza Strip. But we looked at our distribution. It's fairly equal between the three areas. And then we looked at the types of respondents. So we had relatives, we had friends, we had mothers, we had fathers, and we had siblings. And it's broken down into the types of areas as well. And the reason why there's so many friends, relatives, and siblings answer is quite simply that the other members of the family have been killed. So it's, you know, it's been a very difficult situation, and it shows this in the profile of the children, the families. The highest percentage of children of the families were males, and that was 57%, which was quite high, and the percentage of females was 43%. The highest percentage of children was in the age group 5 less than 6 years, and then it broke down. Second place came children in the slightly older age group. The majority of children in the sample resided in the middle of the Gaza Strip and the southern Gaza Strip. As I said, they're fairly equally distributed. And 66.8% of the families had 4 or more children, and 31% had families with 3 children. So quite reasonably large families in today's terms. And 49% of households were displaced 3 times, and 30% were displaced more than 3 times as well. Sorry, it's an error there. And this shows the disruption to daily life that the children were experiencing and the families were experiencing, and trying to hold that family unit together. The observations that we found from the respondents were difficult. There was a large number of responses which referred to the effects of noise, such as explosions, bombs, buildings collapsing, which induced traumatic responses. Now, I've seen this myself. I've worked in refugee camps, and I saw a father one day, a plane was taking off nearby, and he had recently arrived in the camp. He just collapsed on the ground, and this was an adult, because he thought it was a bomber. And for the children to hear these sounds again and again and again, you know, we talked about anesthetic load, which is the ongoing, but the children are really experiencing the worst situations possible. In many cases, hearing any loud noise would bring back the reaction. There were repeated panic attacks and screaming, and another severe fear when hearing the sound of explosions. They had rapid heartbeats, sudden screaming, the fear of death, like we saw in the PTSD symptoms. The fear of death was prevalent, and this led to sleep issues. Obviously, children are afraid to go to sleep that they won't wake up. They're afraid when their parents go to sleep that they won't wake up. And for example, they had ideations that the building might collapse on them while they were asleep. And these weren't just ideations, they were perfectly valid fears. And one carer stated that the child was impacted by the death of the mother and father after the house collapsed on them. So the causes and feelings with trauma, the cause of the child shock, there's the actual stats that we developed, and they're very telling. They're very much in the higher end of the risk schedule and the danger. For example, the child's trauma is caused by the exposure to gunfire, either directly or indirectly. 91%. You know, what these children are experiencing is beyond what anybody. So the cause of the child's shock is watching family member being assaulted by occupation soldiers. And this obviously is ongoing as well. They had a lot of feelings related to traumatic events, bad feelings as though the event was happening, the child's inability to react or express it. A lot of frozen children, and it's a common thing that a child's behaviour will manifest in terms of frozen behaviour. They just can't respond. They just can't. They're just frozen completely at time, and that's a very well-known stress response. They can feel detached or withdrawn from people. Their mood swings, their irritability. The child finds it very difficult to sleep, as I said, and they can be alert. They're always on alert. And in terms of their hormones, that's really dangerous for children. Children experiencing chronic cortisol overload is a very serious thing. It leads to all sorts of bad health measures. Things like in later life gallstones, for example, come from excessive cortisol. So all of these things are just telling on these children day after day and having outbursts of fear and anger. And just one concerning response in relation to PTSD is the strong majority of children feeling that they do not have a future and expecting bad things to happen. I saw a little clip yesterday of a young lad about 9 years of age, and he was just crying into a stranger's arms because all his family had gone. He was the last one left, and he wanted to die with his mother. You know, it's just unbelievable. And these children will find it very difficult. I'll come on to our recommendations in a few minutes. And okay, so the child expecting bad things to happen. Okay, Wafa, do you want to take the recommendations?
Thank you, Dr. Imelda. Bring this report to attention of decision makers. Develop training courses for kindergarten staff on becoming trauma aware. Develop training for kindergarten staff on play-based mitigation activities. Develop training courses for primary school teacher on becoming trauma aware. Develop training courses for teacher on appropriate mitigating measure in the classroom. And develop parenting support to help deal with the trauma in children with ideas for effective activities and how to get support. Develop resources for kindergarten staff, teachers, and parents on communicating on a difficult topic such as discussion death. A plan for create counseling for families and children and counseling in schools. Report this survey assessed 6 months, 1 year to determine longer team impact, term impact, and to identify comparative strategies after a period of time. Use the data collect to contact further studies on the variables identified.
Just the last one there in conclusion. Do you
want the last one. The researchers pay a tribute to the parents and families that responded to this survey under such arduous Syracuse 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 status. It is hot that the recommendation will be implemented as soon as possible, implying those children to being to whole from that trauma. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wafa. That was great, and I hope you got the picture of all of that. It's obviously, as we said, it's in our news every day, and we haven't so far been able to plan to repeat the survey, but I would hope at some stage in the future we can see if we can do that, because then we could see if there's been any improvement or any worsening of the situation, and also that part of this project that we were involved in, the CARE project, we developing the early years sector in Palestine and developing quality early years services, the kindergartens and the nurseries, and Wafa is in charge of all of that. And I think that that is something that we hope to do more training in the future, because the people who work in the kindergartens and nurseries are facing this every day with the children. And they don't need to be fully trauma counsellor experts, but they do need to be trauma aware. And that was something I would hope we'd be able to develop. And I said I would finish with the Yeats quote. I was going to read something else, but I don't think I'd be able to. Yeats said, "Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, for the world's more full of weeping than we can understand."